Hi, I'm Frank Voss, Town Moderator, and I'm here with Dr. Anna Nolin of the Natick Public Schools, Assistant Superintendent. And we just got done with town meeting, a special town meeting, which it was a lot of work, a lot of good information, some debate, and of course the Finance Committee and the School Committee and everybody vetted the issue that we're going to talk about, which is the John F. Kennedy Middle School. We call it, of course, Kennedy Middle School.
We do.
We wanted to sit down and help folks at home understand a little more in a conversational style, a little more of what the project is and some of the highlight issues of the project that will be important to them. Because on March 27th, you're going to have a ballot question, which is going to ask you whether you would want this school to be funded beyond the tax levy. Now, I'm not going to get into that whole deal. Matter of fact, if you want to hear a really good explanation of what that really means, listen to the Finance Committee meetings and listen to those that are actually online at Pegasus. And you can really hear some great explanations of what the tax levy and some of the impacts of it is. But we're talking about a debt exclusion. That's a term we're also going to use.
Okay.
And this project at Kennedy, you can give us some background of the building, is really direly needed. And maybe you can give us an overview of really why.
Sure.
Yeah.
First of all, it's really a pleasure to be in this seat, to be able to do this. This is my 15th year in Natick, and I was middle school principal at Wilson for 10 years. Vice principal and principal, and I've been a middle school educator since I was a teacher. So this opportunity to really strengthen the middle school programs is exciting for us and important for the town. So relative to your question about the facility, it's a very tired facility. It's quite old, and the major issues are that its key systems, electrical, heating, are really failing, and we're at the point where maintenance just isn't enough. And rest assured that our custodial and maintenance crews have worked diligently over the years to maintain this facility, but the durability of the facility is just not what it could have been, I guess. And so there's leaking and there's heating system issues. The building is safe for children, but it's absolutely safe and adequate to do the job. And we're able to deliver parallel programs as we do at Wilson for the educational program. However, the teachers at Kennedy have to go through a lot of machinations and have to work a little bit harder to get the same results given the limitations of the facility. But the key issues are that we need it up to code. We need it to be heated and lighted in appropriate ways. We need it up to Americans with Disabilities Act standards that have changed over time. So all of these pieces that really would allow us to have exactly the kind of programming we have at Wilson and bring our middle school program forward. That's why we need this building.
So this building was built in the 60s.
Correct.
Is that correct? And it was a modular building.
Right.
And one of the things I've heard is, well, let's just renovate it, or let's just fix the things that need to be fixed. Well, the building committee has studied that.
Yes.
That was one of the options that was looked at, as I understand it, and that's about all I understand of it. But it's important to talk about the renovation too, just so that people understand that first it was reviewed, and then what was the outcome of the review.
Right.
Yeah.
So this project is a partnership with the Mass School Building Authority, which is a state organization that helps school systems fund building projects, both renovations and new buildings. And it is actually a strict requirement of theirs in order to be in the phase of funding that we're in, that we have vetted renovation as a viable option and decided yes or no on that. And so you have to go through the renovation discussion as if that's your only option. So that is the first thing that we did. And the site is so constraining and so difficult, and the building is in such a tired state that the building committee and the Mass School Building Authority agreed that renovation was not doable. Now, mind you, just on a cost perspective, let's say that we decided as a town to forego Mass School Building Authority funding and go for a renovation. You know, that's something that I get asked all the time. Like, well, let's get out of this program that's handcuffing us to a new building, as if they're handcuffing us. But the truth of the matter is, we would be spending $55 to $70 million to renovate the building and not even get it up past code. So we would just get to code. We would not deal with the expansion that we need in order to deal with rising enrollments, and we would not be making any enhancements to the instructional facility, what it can do instructionally. It would just be getting it to code.
Yep. I think that point that you just made was one of the most important things, not only for, let's say, people that have kids in school, but it really meant more to me as an empty nester and others, as I've heard in conversation, especially after town meeting, because I think that was really the first time I saw that graph. I had heard about it, but really saw the picture of it. And it really makes a sense. You know, why would you spend $70 million on rehabbing a school, or 50 to 70 million, when you can have a brand new school that will last longer by virtue of spending nearly the same money?
Well, and it's important to note that that $70 million for renovation, without MSBA's approval, would be completely on the Natick taxpayer.
Yes.
Versus the system that we've gone through now, where MSBA and Building Committee say that isn't really going to get you where you need to be for the long-term planning and sustainability for the Natick Middle School program. So they say the new building is the way. So we would forego any funding from MSBA in order to do that, a renovation.
And the reimbursement is what percentage? What's the breakdown? Is it 70-30, something like that?
It is, yes, roughly 70-30, yes. Okay. And if we want to reference the actual graphic, I think it's just worth it for people to take a look at this. And that was reviewed at town meeting, and certainly our town partners, Mr. Chenard, the town administrator, you know, we really sat down and you know, he's on the building committee with us as well. Just, you know, what is the best investment for Natick tax dollars? And that's, you know, slide 13 of the town meeting presentation really helps voters understand why the new building is the best choice.
Now, you have these presentations online. Is it on both the school and the town's website?
It is. If you go to the Natick Public Schools website, which is www.natickps.org, there's a button for the Kennedy Middle School project itself, and there's every presentation, every minute, set of minutes, an agenda for every meeting, updates, and there's also a live feed on the front page with updates.
Excellent. So I'd like to stick with the cost for just a little bit more, because some people are saying is that, oh my God, this is costing $109 million.
Yep.
But we built the high school for how much?
A lot less.
A lot less.
Yep.
So the question is, why?
Right. Well, you know, this has been a really interesting study for me as well. I was here when the Natick High School was built, and we built that facility in a recession time period.
We did.
And construction costs were quite low. At the time we built that facility, just want to check my math, I think for $293 per square foot. I believe that's the number that's in my mind.
Sounds familiar, but
or 283, yeah, something like that.
You've been working these much more closely.
Right. So I mention that simply because at that time, in the scheme of projects in the state, Natick High School was, $249 per square foot. Natick High School was slightly below the state average for building projects then. And one of the reasons that it came in slightly low was also we had a new construction contractor company coming in that wanted to get into the school construction game and gave a quite low bid. And we were in the recession, they were trying to get into the business. It's just not the same conditions today. Construction costs have risen something in the area of 10% a year since then. And the Natick High School, the Natick Kennedy project right now, when you look at all the other projects in the state that are happening that are like projects, so same size, same grade levels, that kind of thing, the Natick project is still below the state average at $483 per square foot, though,
Wow.
which, as you can see, just out of the gate, the construction baseline costs are higher.
Much higher.
So the Kennedy project is still the low-cost option of the buildings that are being built right now. We're still in the same ilk that we were at the high school project, but the costs have just risen so dramatically, and they have outpaced inflation, and it's just the market as it is now.
So why don't you wait until the market gets better?
Because we will lose this opportunity to partner with MSBA, and there's nothing to say that the market will get better.
I always like and that's a perfectly succinct answer. I like to think of it as, and I think we were looking at this somewhat with the Wilson project, or maybe Ben Ham, I can't remember which one it was, but there was a window of time.
Right.
And there's some kind of a list that they have, that they being MSBA, the state, where you're on the top of the list and you're approved.
Correct.
But if you lose your approval, you go to the bottom of the list.
That's right. If we are not successful in both gaining the appropriation from town meeting, which we were, very successful, 23-1 vote for that. Thank you, town meeting.
Great job.
But if we lose the opportunity with our voters to take advantage of this partnership with MSBA, we go to the bottom of the list again. And the list is long because there are many schools in the state who are willing to take the money that Natick would leave on the table then. And it could be upwards of 5 to 10 years before we would rise to it again. And quite honestly, we are in such an overcrowding situation with the middle schools and needing to have long-term, long-range planning for all of our children that we cannot wait.
Yep.
If we do, we're going to have to start doing Band-Aid things in addition to renovation of Kennedy. We're going to have to start adding modulars at the middle schools in huge numbers, not just to transition, but for real.
Right.
And that's not sustainable planning over time.
Okay. Modulars keys up a quick thought that I have, and actually I've heard, the coffee shop type of talk, is that why are we putting the modules in but for increasing population, student population?
Yes, I mean, modulars are put in place, and I want to just say that modulars have come a long way since
They have.
when I was in school, and it was like a trailer in a parking lot somewhere.
I remember my kids modulating.
These are really good facilities, and depending on whether you buy a more temporary modular or a more permanent modular, and we have some more permanent modular facilities in our district, they are not intended to be the total solution to a town's enrollment problem.
Right.
We can do smaller adjustments with modulars, but the amount of students that we need to accommodate at the middle school, that's a lot of modulars that we're going to need.
Well, that's where I was actually going to go, is you've been doing some shifting in the district. I know Lilja has 4 more?
6 more classrooms.
6 more, okay.
Yeah.
And you've moved others to other units too, or other facilities too. And that's kind of like to fit the box to make it work. But I think if the numbers that I saw, and I'm trying to get to the population numbers, the student population numbers, is that it just won't work, and that the increases are going to be such that you need to plan up to a school that was 650 now or 600 to holding or housing. I think it was 1,000, right?
Well, the maximum that the new proposed facility would be is 1,000 students. We're at capacity now at the old Kennedy with 550 students being the capacity. We're actually over that right now. We're at 650.
That's what the 6 came
from. And Wilson, which was built for 850, is also over capacity at 955. So both places are really jammed, and I've weathered at Wilson the rising population. You have to do in-house construction to make classrooms out of things that weren't classrooms.
Right.
And it is, both facilities are fine. There's plenty of room for students. There's plenty of room for incoming students at Kennedy. We can make that happen, but it's not a forever solution. And we are charged as town partners with long-range planning that's sensible and gives taxpayers an understanding of our big vision planning, and that's what we're trying to do with our town partners right now.
All right, so to me, we've just touched on probably the 2 most important things is where is the population of the students going to be through the life of or the early life of this building?
Right.
Because you can only predict so much.
That's right.
There's a point in time where your pro forma goes, it's a guess.
Right.
Finger in the wind.
I mean, I'm asked all the time, like, when do you think you'll stop needing more buildings, and when do you think you'll stop needing to catch up with teachers, right?
Yeah.
Because not only do you have to, you know, build the buildings, you have to staff them. And I wish I had an answer to that. We have some pretty good predictive models, and we've been receiving 100 students a year. Now, this is district-wide. When I say that and people say 100 kids a year at the middle school, then you're going to be, you know, the middle schools will be too small very soon. It's 100 district-wide. So we think that's probably going to be the case for the next 10 years. Of course, if continued building occurs in the town, that's going to change things. I spent the summer sort of heat mapping where the new move-ins were, like how many kids from each family and neighborhood, just trying to get a predictive sense of what's going on. There's no like silver bullet answer to this question.
There really never is. But there are key indicators that will drive that and will hopefully allow us to make decisions that will change.
Correct.
And my first thing I looked at when I started to hear the beginnings of this project is it not malleable but fungible? Can you move within the box to take up those changes and those swings that you might see in the population as well and also the change in education?
Well, you know, we think that the Kennedy Middle School was approved at 1,000 students, which honestly, the MSBA likes the smallest facility possible, and they were really pushing a much smaller facility. But we went in there with the data and the story of Natick's rising enrollment, and we were able to push them towards 1,000. And once they saw our enrollment projections, they were
convinced.
They rolled.
They rolled.
You know, so we were pleased about that. That was not the case in the Wilson and the high school. You know, that they were very much bound under those model school programs to stick within the MSBA's restrictions. So we did move that forward, and we do think that's adequate at this time. And yes, there's some swing on either side of what will happen. And that's not to say that, you know, we may be looking for additional solutions in the future, but we've given it the maximum shot that we can with the with the town with the MSBA funding.
Excellent. I'd like to move on to the actual proposed structure, if we can at this point. Just get right into the facility.
Okay.
Because I thought the details that you provided to town meeting and in other instances were fabulous.
Great.
You can get a real visual of what's going to be done, and I really appreciated that. So maybe you can give us an overview of what was in the presentation. We'll hopefully show it to the folks at home while we're talking about it.
This was starting with slide 25, just an overview of the total campus. The Kennedy School, you know, when I got here back in 2003, there was this lore that it was sort of built on a swamp and, you know, it was sinking 2 inches every year. I now know more about the soil at Kennedy than I ever thought I would. It's a very interesting site that is both challenging and educational. It's built on a very educationally natural education site. So there's a lot of wetlands, there's a lot of vernal pools, there's a lot of green space. There's town paths that were on that facility that have kind of come to disrepair. So a huge opportunity for us was to design this building with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in mind, and using the actual site as a teaching tool. So if you look at the site layout, you'll see that it preserves pretty much the outlines of the campus as it is. And if you're looking at the map itself, you can see the white structure in the front of the document down at the bottom. That's the new Kennedy, and in red dotted lines behind it is the old Kennedy. And obviously there's a lot of questions about phased renovation, but we did that at the high school and we did that at Kennedy, and it's sort of the way it is in most building projects, mostly because schools don't have the luxury of a whole flat parcel of land somewhere else where they can just build and unfettered by any challenges like that. But back to the facility. This was really looked at as a Brown Kennedy campus scenario, looking to make as many improvements to those two sites, to make those sites work together as sister schools, to maximize the green space for the front of the Brown School, to ensure that it was easy for the Brown School students to access the auditorium at Kennedy, because the Brown School does not have its own auditorium facility. To preserve the play structures that are there at the Brown School, to improve on-site traffic in terms of parent pickup and drop-off, expand parking, to get a fitness center and turf field that would allow us to do the physical fitness programs that Kennedy is known for in a more reliable way throughout the school year.
Nice.
So we're very excited. The Performing Arts Center really fills a need. I just finished a Fine and Performing Arts audit with our community partners last year for our curriculum. Space is a premium. Worked with the Walnut Hill School to look at their facilities and make sure that whatever we put in place complements what the town has as its portfolio of spaces. As you know, arts are very important to Natick.
Extremely.
And we want to make sure that the Kennedy facility it's a community gem that everyone can use.
So it's going to be a 3-story building.
It is.
And it currently is how many stories now? Is it 3?
It's 2 stories
It's 2
right
stories?
now. Well, it has an unusual structure due to its modular 60s feel, so it's hard for me to answer that. Some parts are 2, some parts are 3.
But the overall building box, the box of the building is going to be 3 stories.
So I talked about the performance art and the athletic facility, but the core structure is a 4-story building, which is a change, but also a cost-saving measure for the taxpayer. Less roof, less moving into the wetland areas. So this was one of the cost-saving measures that the building committee put into place. But it also gives a distinct hallway for each grade level, which is a best practice in middle school education, where in a larger school you create smaller family units within a grade level, teams or neighborhood classrooms, and this building is designed in that way. And those neighborhood classrooms are also snuggled around project-based learning labs, which are put our science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum at the core of how we use the facility.
Now, is that a major change? That is a major change?
It is
from what we have today?
From the Kennedy facility?
Yeah, from what exists today.
What exists today at the Kennedy School is a very outdated mode for teachers. It's one teacher demonstration table in every classroom, including the science labs, because the way science used to be conducted was teachers did the labs in front of students, and students watched and took notes. Now students actually do the science themselves. And so we've needed to rearrange the space in order to make that happen.
Excellent. So this is now making a program change, curriculum change too.
It is.
While also making a major, of course, a major change to the facility.
It is. Our State Department of Education 3 years ago completely changed our science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum.
Now, you and I talked about something that I knew about it before, is that there's part of the project which the words we used was reimbursable, and there's part that is not. It might be at this point when we've talked about the facility, and everybody will get a sense of the footprint and what's there. What is and what isn't?
Sure.
There's some movable parts, and then there are immovable parts.
Right. Yeah. So this will be shocking to people, I'm sure, to hear, but the MSBA doesn't think that an auditorium is necessary in a middle school facility. And so the auditorium is really the non-reimbursable item that we have. That's the highest price point. So that's the big piece. The other piece is that the MSBA gives you square footage allotments. They say we're gonna do X amount of square footage that we will reimburse for, and how you move that around is really up to you. So we are being reimbursed for all but 6,000 square feet of the building itself.
Okay, so we've done, the town has done a good job of making certain they're getting in it.
We are not trying to build some expansive mansion-like school. We are building a school that does the job in a creative, value-oriented way, but gives kids every opportunity for an excellent education.
Excellent, excellent.
So the other piece is that there's reimbursements for outside pieces like the field or traffic, things like that. But again, it's an amount, and how we use it is up to us. So you know, everyone wants to know, you know, is the turf field covered or not covered? There's a certain amount for things that are outside the building that are covered,
Yep.
and we're going to be over that percentage just by nature of the campus itself. So yeah, you could say it's all to blame on the turf, but you could say it's all to blame on the paths, or you could say it's all to
Right.
blame on the parking. So it really just, we've kept our non-reimbursable spaces at a minimum.
Well, I understand town meetings vote as a not to exceed,
Correct.
meaning to say, this is the top. This
Correct.
is the most that would be spent. And then there are pieces of that which are part of this refundable and non-refundable parts of the project, or non-reimbursable, I should say. And those things that can change, that can move, might change the cost within the building. And I'm saying might very
It might.
carefully.
Correct.
Very carefully.
Right.
Because we've had some buildings where we've been, you know, right down to the last
Yes.
dollar.
Yeah.
And then we did in one case have a little excess, which was able to be spent on additional furnishings for the facility. I assume we're gonna stay within that same practice and stick with it. And the building committee drives through or stays with this project so long as it's going to be, until it's done.
That's right.
Until it's signed off by everybody.
Correct. Yep.
So when is it going to be signed off? What's a timeline?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we're slated to build and open in 2021/2022. So we'll be on this committee throughout that. And it's really important to note that Building Chair Steve Myler is committed, we are all committed as members of that committee, to doing a value engineering discussion at every meeting. And by value engineering, we mean there's a list of items and features that have gradations of cost, right? So I'll just give you one example, like the type of berms that we use. You
Yep.
can have really high-end ones.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can have, it all depends what we want to spend. Types of turf field, types of lights, types of, so there's lots of feature discussions, and we are constantly looking through our list about where are we in terms of valuing these as we look at the scope of the larger project. So the number is 109, not to exceed 109.
Okay.
But we are going to do everything in our power to make it as low as possible for the Natick taxpayer.
Every project has a contingency. What is the contingency approximately? Is there a percentage that MSBA requires, or?
There is. I don't have that number off the
Okay.
top of my head,
That's
but there is a contingency.
Everybody wants to know,
I know.
if something goes wrong, can we still cover it and
yes,
afford it?
there's
and
a requirement.
that's the point of asking
right.
the question.
You know, we've just sort of gotten the numbers out to the voters at large, and certainly those numbers will come
Okay.
out. But it's also important to know that the building committee members have largely been on the building committee also for the high school and for Wilson. So there is a working knowledge. These people are extremely knowledgeable, extremely committed. It allows us to cut to the value conversations quite
Good.
easily because they're not confused by all the other pieces, right? The process, all of those items are quite important, and they know about them already, but they're able to ask tougher questions of our contractors and architects, and so I've really benefited from their collaboration.
And actually, that brings up, you just mentioned the contractors and architects, is that we're not doing this in the dark either. So we have quality people, like I know one person was a former builder architect, and another person is an engineer. I think there might be two engineers, now they think of it.
Yes.
But then we also have some project specialists too,
Correct.
who actually spoke before town meeting. Did a great job too.
Yes, our
in my
project
opinion.
management firm is
Right.
Compass, and our architects are AI3.
And they did the high school?
They did.
They were on
and
that high school
Wilson.
project? Okay.
Yeah, the OPM is different, but the architect has been with us through Wilson and the high school.
So we know the quality of that firm's work.
We do.
And and we have a relationship which is, pretty good.
Yes.
You're not having to restart or relearn anything.
And as the
that's a good
principal
thing.
who lived in their Wilson house for a long time, I
There you
can
go.
tell you, I can attest to you that we've just not had problems with that facility.
Fabulous. Excellent. All right, there's always going to be arguments, disgruntlements, and whatnot. We might as well at least touch base on them
All right.
now. No matter what you do, there are going to be folks that are impacted by work. Noise, traffic, any kind of construction is always going to be
Sure.
a niche for thing. You want to make certain that the Brown kids are safe as well as the Kennedy kids are safe. Maybe you can touch on some of those things that you're dealing with. What's important is how you're going to deal with them.
Sure.
Not to say that you're going to resolve all the problems.
Yep.
As you and I know we can't.
Right.
But at least we should talk them through
Right.
and know that we're focusing on them.
So it's important to know that it's a rarity for a school system to have like an empty field where they're building a school and they can just never disrupt students, right? We just don't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury to put students in another facility while we're building the Kennedy.
Yep.
So when architectural and contracting firms do this work, they have to give you tiering and phasing plans, which includes how will construction be phased, how will sectors of the building and the campus be closed and opened, how will traffic be routed. So we've seen the first iterations of those plans.
Good.
And it's really too complicated to talk about roads and all of that here. But there's all types of management pieces they address: dust management, noise, traffic, checking in with the building site supervisors, managing contractors on site, so that we know where every person is at every time relative to when the children are there. So there's a very clear plan in place, and there's also someone on site for emergencies and contacts with our office, so that if there's anything on site that happens that we need to deal with immediately, say some lag in construction or some unusual traffic situation that has occurred, that we can address it right there on the fly.
Perfect. Before we move on to a couple other topics, is there anything else that folks need to understand about the construction review and everything else as we go through this? Because I want to make certain that we explain it all.
Well, I guess I want to say that that the way that the building is designed to maximize teacher collaboration and that student connectedness is really the best of what we've seen across the nation from middle school design. We've been doing research for 3 years, visiting what we think are the best places in the United States that have middle schools like ours, and we've stolen the best and put that in place here. And we're able to do so, I think, at a reasonable cost. So that piece, I'm really proud of. We do have room for expansion. A lot of people ask me that later. The MSBA requires you to, if you were to expand, what would that look like? And so we have expansion plans should we need that, but God bless, I hope we don't need it right now.
True, but
so
be prepared.
we have also been able to upgrade the facility so that we could have our special education programs on site. Right now, because of the constraints of the current Kennedy facility, they're all moved to the Wilson program, and that's fine, except that we would like Kennedy students to be able to go to school at Kennedy, even if they have the most particular special needs. And so we will be able to upgrade this facility to do that, and that's important to me as a mother, it's important to me as an educator, and it's important as a town that kids can go to their neighborhood school.
Sure. Now I'm going to pick on a subject that I used to review when I was on the finance committee.
Okay.
And I'm not going to pick on it, but I want to delve into it.
Sure.
I think that's a better way to do it. We built a building, a lovely building. 2021, 2022, we're walking in, the kids are going in. And you're putting now, another 200, 300 kids maybe at the most? The kids need teachers. You need operational staff. You have operational costs.
Correct.
That are going to be increased because of increased, just the square footage is going to cost us more. Where are we, or these types of concerns will be reviewed by the school committee. That's
Correct.
Number one.
Yes.
So it's not the building committee's job and whatnot to do that. So let's make certain we make
Right.
that clear first. Okay, I got that right. But where are we now in the planning stage, and are we ahead of thinking about that, rather than when, let's say, the town went through a problem when they built the library. Won't talk about schools.
Okay.
But we built the library. We did a beautiful library, the Morris Library. We did a great addition. Then all of a sudden, we got to staff this. Oh my Lord.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my, there's so many more costs, and we had a problem with facilities, a heating system, and ice on the roof and things like that. All these costs started to come to bear. And we started to look at that and say, got to fund this.
Right.
So what have we done so far to think about this? Do you have some insight? Because we know that that will need to be programmed into this, not the schools, but the town's budget
Right.
as
Well,
a whole.
I have to say we're way ahead of that.
I had a feeling you would be.
Well, first of all, we've started to redistrict students from the Wilson to Kennedy already.
Oh, okay,
and with
good.
them follows teachers from the Wilson facility. So part of the moving parts is we reduce at Wilson and move to Kennedy. So some of the staff that we will be using will come from the Wilson side.
All right.
But some will be added. And as part of the MSBA program, you must project operating costs, you must project personnel needs, administrative, heating, lighting, all of the things, because MSBA doesn't want any surprises for towns about, oh, so you build this big place and then you've got to actually staff it.
Right.
So there are documents available actually on our website that will show you what is required in the next few years for staffing and what is required for upkeep in terms of like increased heating or increased cooling. You know, I think if I recall the opening at the high school, that was not surprising because they also had to do some projections, but it is a bigger facility.
It is,
and
yeah.
it is, there's more heating and cooling happening, but there's also greener features happening. So there's a balance to how all of that works. But just a larger facility, you know there's going to be some costs there.
Any idea what that is going to be?
For energy,
Yeah.
no, and that's a volatile cost and
Yeah,
very
it's
hard to
huge
calculate.
moving target.
But there are some, it depends which line item you want to look at, and we could
Yep.
certainly pull that document up. But you know, it varies depending on.
I'll allow you and the finance committee and
Yeah.
the administration
Actually,
to get into the weeds.
We spent a long evening doing that,
I'll
actually.
bet you did, because I remember doing those evenings
Yeah, yeah.
for 12 years, and
Yeah.
it's a good.
Right, and
Let's say it's a good exercise to go through anyway.
Even down to what would the cost of a grass field upkeep over 15 years versus turf over 15 years be?
Sure.
So we looked at that, and we have to look at replacing and pesticides and all of these different features and factors that go into maintaining any site. And so we've looked at all of that, snow removal on the new pathways, those kinds of things.
Okay, so again, we're in the new building.
I can't wait. I hope it's true.
And we're hopefully going to have this. We'll have a spike in the cost because of the debt override, but then we'll also have some of our debt peeling off at the same time.
Right.
And I want to back up and looking. Now we're looking into the future. We're talking about, I believe, Wilson and the high school peeling off. Well, Wilson for one,
Yep.
peeling off at a time certain. It
Again,
is in our document
It's in our
somewhere.
slide 13 again that
Okay.
we referenced previously. You know, Town Administrator Chenard and I really wanted the public to understand when their tax burden shifts. And,
Yes.
you know, there's actually, for the first few years of the project, the Kennedy project, not a huge tax burden change. And I say not huge, but any change is difficult. Like,
It is.
Listen, I grew up one of 9. You know, certainly, I understand the impact that even $100 a year can make to a family. And that's, you know, the hardest part of this for me is that impact for families. So there's smaller impacts in the first couple years of the project, while the high school project is decreasing and the Wilson project is ending. And that's what this graph will show people, when those things drop off and when they pick up.
And so that's being thought about. And this was something that I heard recently from one person in our neighborhood is like, oh my God, we're now being asked to add more on top of more. And then what happens now that we have this big window which is growing from $4 million to $7 million in the debt exclusion area, line items. Is that now going to peel off? As I say, come off the debt. And I had little time that I even had to explain how those projects are going to come off. So as we're increasing debt, this is what we're being asked to do, increase the capacity for debt.
Correct.
But there's other debt that will be peeling off at the same time.
Correct. And while this isn't my area of town management, Mr. Chenard works very hard with his team to restructure debt.
Yes.
within the existing debt. And that's really looking at the rates, looking at the ways that he can restructure different projects. And so we actually talk about that a lot and how he's curating different aspects of the debt.
And I think there was an excellent discussion that I watched, because I watch the Finance Committee meetings. I appoint the folks there. And he gave an excellent explanation. He and Mr. Townsend did a great job of telling people where we were, and as we travel through this 20-year project, where are the other things, the other boxes going to either move or go away, and which opens up for future things that may happen. They're going to need to happen too.
Right, and partnering with MSBA means that there's $70 million less, or $30 million less on the average voter for this debt. So the need for middle school is not going to go away. So we're going to have to educate our students. So the question is paying now or paying later, paying less now or paying more later.
Now you're probably aware that I came out of the cable television internet business industry. And one of the problems with technology is that it's great today, may work well for 2 years, but it could change like light years in 2 years. And one of the things that we are doing here is and I've read something on the building committee notes, or at least the agenda, that you talked about the infrastructure, and it's embedded in this project.
Yes.
I want to make certain from where I stand, and I know other folks would be concerned, that what we do is going to be long-standing, and what we do also takes into account some of the other focuses of the town, like sustainability, and things like that. So maybe you can give us a little sense of what's being talked about.
So in terms of technology
and
I'm really
sustainability.
glad that you asked me that, because I know, so first of all, I just want to say that my doctoral research was studying all one-to-one technology deployments in the state of Massachusetts back in 2003. And I did that because when Natick High School came online, it was quite out in front in terms of its one-to-one technology model. And so, it was a very difficult thing to have people understand while they were trying to pass a debt override, to also understand how the laptops fit in. So I'm going to say to you that using laptops in our secondary schools is a part of the way we do business now, and Natick is on the forefront of doing it well. But I need people to know that when you partner with the MSBA, you get a $1,200 per student reimbursement for technology.
Excellent.
And it is also the part of the way that the state does business now as well. And it just wasn't clear. I mean, you can say that they don't do enough because they don't pay for laptops. Other states, when we travel, whole counties purchase laptops, en masse for their students. And maybe we'll get there someday, but we're still town by town here. So we do get reimbursed for that from the MSBA, and we do have a long-range sustainability plan in place right now for all of the laptop deployments that we will have. So you can look on our website, and actually we just presented again yesterday to the Ed Subcommittee of Finance Committee about the sustainability project. We are not adding laptops that we cannot sustain over time. And we are not adding laptops that are bonded in debt over a 20-year period.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I don't, again, this is not my area of expertise, how to bond things, but what I know is that for project pieces like that, they can be bonded differently due to their short life nature. We are not asking taxpayers to pay for 30 years on something that only lasts 5. We just can't do that. And by the way, we're reimbursed per student quite a lot, $1,200 per student for technology, fixtures, all of those pieces.
But that includes everything. That includes the networking, also what's in the classroom.
It does.
And things like that.
It does,
so
yeah.
It's more of a package amount.
It's some, but it's not enough.
And that was part of the point I wanted to make, is that we still have the one-on-one program.
We do.
Which will be evident in years to come.
Correct.
Just by virtue of having to replace.
Right.
But we will be getting some facility-based equipment for Kennedy, and it'll be like a startup.
Right.
Basically.
Right, and it will allow us to take the equipment that we currently have at Kennedy and bring it to Wilson and to our other levels. There isn't, there is no laptop unturned, so to speak, that we really look to get the maximum useful life out of those devices. And even when they're done, we take them for parts and then we retire them out.
How about energy saving, recycling, that kind of, other sustainability, facility-based, let's say, improvements and enhancements?
So the building is going to seek the Silver LEED certification, which is some sort of designation about energy savings and how green the building is. So we've been working with our town energy sustainability coordinator. She was out for a little while, but now she's back, and we're looking forward to continuing those town department conversations about how we can make this building as energy efficient as possible. I mean, it's built that way from the get-go. The materials that it uses, the heating structures, the way that the lighting is designed, all of those pieces, all LED lighting, all of those are an upgrade from even the high school in terms of what we're able to do. An upgrade for less cost, no less. So the materials that the building is using are just more efficient and energy friendly, the actual building materials. And we're in the phase right now where we're actually hearing about all of those pieces. So there's more to come in terms of how we'll do that.
What did I miss? What did we not talk about?
I know.
Is there anything that you wanted to
I guess I just want to bring
summarize?
up one question that one of our finance committee members asked that I just think is key for people to know. A lot of people ask, why not use the Model Schools program again? Which we were under the Model School program for Wilson and for the high school. That is an option now, but the program has changed significantly from when we've used it before. And basically, you must take their model in full, and basically you need to take the box and just stick it on a site. And given the constraints of the Kennedy site, the box wouldn't even fit on the site. It would not even make sense on the site. We couldn't make it work. We would need to choose another site. And so before we even had a design that we agreed on, preferred schematic design, we had to go into feasibility, a feasibility study. And one of the things that we did with our town partners in the building committee was review several sites in Natick, many sites in Natick. So this was back when Windy Low was an option and those kinds of things. And we, so at that point we were like, can we model school or not? And there was no site that we could put a model school on in Natick and have it fit. Wonderful. And they don't allow you, you just take it out of the box and that's what you get. So that's why we aren't doing the model school program. And the reimbursement wasn't any greater than the program that we're doing now. So why wouldn't we?
So there was no value
There was zero value in this phase.
Dollar paid out.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Now that actually does surprise me, but then again, it's a state. So
right.
You can see my thinking of the state programs. Some of the state programs, although they're valuable, but sometimes things don't make very much sense.
I guess the other piece I would just want to add is that the Kennedy project is one piece of a much longer range plan. I can't just look at the Kennedy project. We have to look at, what are the trends in elementary enrollment that are coming down the pike relative to the buildings and the move-ins. Like, we're really looking at that, working with the town, with the Department of Public Works, trying to map those move-ins with their GIS system, and we're really trying to get a handle on that, because I'm always asked, like, so what's next? The master space study that we did many years ago, which is also on the website if people would like to review, made many recommendations. Now, it's not a Bible for how we have to operate, but it is a good guideline. It did predict some of the problems that we would be having. And many years from now, if we continue to grow as we are, we're going to have to upgrade our elementary facilities. I get asked a lot about the high school. Is it big enough? And I just want to reassure people that we have plans for shifting, say, the preschool to other places so that we can expand the high school. Just the nature of high school instructional design right now allows us to free students up, and the laptop program gives us some flexibility for how we do our programming and schedule. So I want people to stop thinking of traditional high school scheduling the way we have always thought about it, and start thinking that we have more means to change the way the high school day looks to also accommodate the facility. We have our students out in the community a lot, and we have them out doing real work that's tied to the studies that they do. And we can work schedules and programs as such so that we are not overcrowded there.
I've always believed that our town is ever-changing too.
It is.
And those dynamics, there's things that you can't control as a school district, such as 185 units that might be built on a certain plot of land.
Yes.
But you can think about those things as they would affect your department. But there's no way you could plan on those beyond what you already know or what's proposed.
Right.
And that's one of the hard things. And you folks in the school committee really have your backs against the wall, because sometimes whatever you do is not going to be right to 50% or half of the people. I'm exaggerating probably. But
I take really great pride that part of this issue is that we have made a problem for ourselves, because we have defined our school system as one to be in. And so I take great pride, and then I'll work like the Dickens to address the enrollment problem. That's all we can do.
Okay. Well, let's tell people we've talked about a lot of stuff.
We have.
And you gave great overviews, but they may want to see it further.
Sure.
So the town's website is natickma.org, and I know that some of these documents, whether you go into the selectmen's agendas or if you go into the finance committee agendas, or even in the general posting, you'll find them. But as you said, they're also on the school.
They're at www.natickps.org, and there's a button for the Kennedy Middle School project, and it's all in one place.
Now, what if someone has a question and they want to ask something?
Who
do they go to?
There's actually a link right there that says Kennedy Building Project email, and it goes to me, to our communications director, Christina Maryland, and to everyone on the building committee. Because we want to make sure that all of our committee members are understanding the beat of the town's questions. So it goes to all of them, and then we discuss them at our meetings. Big themes that come from them, any new developments, it's a part of how we do business.
Your meetings are posted. They're public. Do you plan on any other, now we're doing this just after the town meeting.
Well, it's funny you say that,
vote,
Frank.
And I want to make certain everybody understands what's going on.
So,
what's happening out there in the community for forums and
so tonight, anyone can join us at the Kennedy School at 7 o'clock. We'll be talking specifically about safety tonight. So we'll be talking about traffic with our police officer partners, Chief Hicks and Lieutenant Lozon, and Officer Heffler will be there. Officer Heffler, by the way, is a member of the school building committee, so we make sure that we're constantly having these safety discussions. But in light of recent events around school safety in the nation and some worries about traffic considerations in the community, we wanted to invite people to ask and have those questions answered about the design of the facility and how we address those. So that's tonight. Saturday, I'll be at Kennedy with Principal Zatoli for a tour if people want to look at the facility. I just want to caution people that this is not I'm an incoming fourth grader coming to Kennedy kind of tour. This is just to look at the facility. There's no kids in it. It's just so that, we really want taxpayers to understand the state of the facility. Like, it's hard for me to say what people can afford and can't in their taxes, but it is important for people to understand what the building looks like right now. And once you see it, you understand, gee, we really shouldn't wait. So that's happening Saturday. It's important that voters get out and vote on the 27th, which is the special town meeting where both school committee elections will be decided, and the Kennedy project is up for consideration with the voters.
So it'll be the question will be on the actual ballot.
Yes, it
when
will.
Everybody else is being re-elected as we normally do.
Yes.
And the clerk reminded me the polls are open 7 to 8.
Okay.
7 in the morning, 8 to 8 o'clock at night. And you really should get out there and tell the town, your activists, what you think.
Yes.
And truly what your decision would be if you want to fund this, in addition to your property taxes that you're paying right now.
And if people have questions in the interim, getting us on the website, we get back to you within 24 hours about those questions. And it's really important. It is a local election, and I think that sometimes instead of a presidential election, I think people sometimes don't get out there to vote as much as they would in a presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
And this one really has impact for you as a Natick community member. And
it does.
I just want to encourage everybody to get out there just to make sure that you get heard.
Yep, and that's the purpose of getting out on March 27th, Tuesday, as we usually vote on Tuesdays, and voice your opinion. Make certain you vote. Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Okay.
I'm glad we could do this and get the information out to folks in the town.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're done.